Hi, everyone. We are live. I'm Debbie Schwartz, founder of Road to College, and I'm here with Keith Babich from CommonBond. So I'm sure by now, hopefully, you guys recognize Keith. I don't know what number of this is. Definitely like your fourth or fifth time, Keith. So,
Wow.
and we're just going to give people a chance to come on. They're first being notified that where the Facebook Live has started. We're a tiny bit late. My end, I was trying to clear up my picture. It was a little fuzzy, but hopefully it's gotten a little better. And what's most important is that Keith is clear and you can hear him, and I know you can hear me. So as you come on and watch, we'd love to just hear where you're from, how many kids you have, what year your kids are in school. Feel free to put it in the comments. I see some viewers are starting to gather. And if you guys knew, or maybe you saw or you didn't, but the past week, I did a lot of Facebook Lives on different topics related to loans. So this is our fifth one. This is, the second week of June. It is starting the, I guess what you'd say the season when families are really starting to dig in and figuring out what the loans, what the loan process is all about, what they need to understand, what type of research they need to do. And so that's why we're spending so much time doing these Facebook Lives. And, tonight we're going to summarize a lot of the stuff that we've talked about, but I find that it's never hurtful to repeat this information because people come on and learn it at different times. And we're going to try and put it all together and help you figure out, how to make it useful and how to use this information to actually make a decision. So Keith, while we're waiting for people to start to come on, do you want to give us a little bit about your background, what you did before CommonBond, what you're doing at CommonBond? I think it's always helpful for people to know kind of your tons of expertise.
Sure, Debbie. Thank you for that welcome. Really appreciate being here. CommonBond has partnered with you. I think this is probably our fourth or fifth webinar, as you mentioned. It's an exciting place for us to be and really a great opportunity to speak directly with parents or some students, answer questions, and I often learn as much during sessions, I think, as we have the opportunity to teach others. It's really great to get the questions and know what people's thoughts are and how they're digging in and sort of interpreting this process. We know it could be a complicated process for sure. I know that myself because I've been working in the financial aid world since 1994, so I guess that's about 25 years. I've worked in the financial aid office at a variety of schools, usually in the New York City area, schools like Yeshiva University and Toro College and Mercy College as well. Most recently, I was Associate Vice President of Financial Aid at Berkeley College. In my career, I've spent time at Citibank Student Loans and College Loan Corporation as well, and now CommonBond as a student loan provider. So I've been in both seats in the financial aid office working directly with students and families, which I enjoy very much, as well as working on the student loan side, helping families to find better funding solutions through private student loans relative to the federal student loan programs that are available. I've been with CommonBond now for just over a year and a half. We happen to be based in New York City in the Soho area. It's a really exciting company to work for. We do some really interesting and exciting things for families in terms of getting lower price student loans to parents in lieu of plus loans, and then to students as well directly.
Yeah, and you mentioned something which not that many people would really know, not that they follow the history of student loans, but a lot of the private lenders have become much more competitive in terms of what they can offer compared to the government loans, and that's why I think it's important to bring on a lot of the different companies so that you can explain the features, and it's families should be looking in both places. They should understand the federal loans, the Parent Plus loans, and they should be looking in the private loan world as well to make an informed decision.
Yeah, I think that's really the best piece of advice. We can't say that one particular solution is best for a multitude of people. It's really a very personal decision, and it's personal for a lot of reasons. It's personal because people have their own sense of risk, reward, and then individuals have their own credit background, FICO score, length of credit history, family income, and things of that nature that actually directly impact the cost of the loan. But we'll obviously delve pretty deeply, I think, into some of these details today. But it's really possible, and lots of families and lots of students are getting loans at lower interest rates than the federal government makes available. That's simply the case. It's not always the case. In some cases, families could benefit best from the federal programs, but in many, many cases, a family would be really wise to take advantage of private loans because they offer the better terms than the federal programs can offer. And I think in that regard, one of the ways that kind of helps people to understand and really helps to drive it home is that the federal loans are really a one-size-fits-all solution. And the federal government makes a single loan product available for a single consumer. So if the consumer is a student directly, it's going to be the direct loan, maybe a subsidized or an unsubsidized loan, but it's a single loan product at a single interest rate. That rate happens to be fairly competitive right now, which is great for students. But when families need additional funding, again, it's a one-size-fits-all. And there are families that can certainly score better or price better in private loan programs, or the terms and the details of the loan really better fit those family situations than the federal programs do. So it's really approaching the process with an open mind. Yep. And looking as much as you can to see what best fits the family's needs.
Absolutely. Okay, so with that in mind, we talked about that we were going to do just a quick summary for everybody. We went into this in depth over the past week, but just a summary of what the different types of loans are, starting with the federal, loans for students, and just maybe if you could just give a highlight about what those loans are, what loans are available for parents, and then move into the private loans.
Sure. So let's we're looking primarily, I know, with your population, generally undergraduate students mostly coming into school for the first time. I think some of your parents may have been through the process before with another child, but for many of them, this is really the first time moving through the process as well. The federal government makes student loans available to help fill the gap that exists after the free money, right? And I always say, free is a four-letter word, put it in quotations, because inevitably somebody pays. Right? We know that, but our hope is that families gain as much direct funding that is either grant or scholarship toward tuition and costs. But we know at the end of the day, and your families know, those folks that are listening for sure, that when you've received your award letter, it starts out with a fairly large number being the tuition, and your school might include tuition and all of the other expense elements that are not necessarily direct charges due to the school. And that's a fairly large number depending on the school that you're attending, right? It could be $30,000, $40,000, $50,000, $60,000, $70,000, again, depending on the institution that the student is attending. And then we begin to subtract or minus. And those grants and the scholarships are typically listed first, and hopefully they're reducing that total cost significantly. But somewhere down the line, there's going to be remaining costs. And that's sort of like the donut hole, right? That's the amount that's uncovered and the amount that a family needs to address. And at that point, after the grants and the scholarships, then really what's left. So what's left is either direct payments to the school, and that could be the way families fund, or it could be the way families fund a certain portion of it. Because it's never all or nothing. And I think what your families have learned at this point is that a financial aid package really is a package that's been culled together from a variety of sources. So we hope grants, we hope scholarships, we hope other free funds perhaps that have flowed in, and then maybe direct payments to the school in a certain amount that the family's able to afford, and then loans remain at the back end. Or what do we need to borrow in order to fund? So the first source, or the first place that the school generally sends a family to borrow is going to be with a loan directly for the student. And that's going to be a direct loan for the student, which is sourced directly from the federal government. The Department of Education is the lender on that. And depending on the family's need, it will either be a subsidized or an unsubsidized loan. Now, the first piece of that for first-year freshman students will be $3,500. Now, if a family is a little bit on the needy side or demonstrates some financial need based on the FAFSA application, a student may be able to get $3,500 in subsidized funding, which means that the government will actually help the student by paying the interest while the student is in school, and for 6 months after they graduate, a period that's known as the grace period. That's really a nice bumper, a nice bonus. Now, a freshman student can get $3,500 either in the subsidized program or the unsubsidized program for those families that are less needy, and then access another $2,000 in the unsubsidized, or what's known as the additional unsubsidized program. So we're guaranteeing, right, the government guarantees that a freshman student can access $5,500 in student loans. It'll be some combination of subsidized and or unsubsidized funding.
And just to emphasize, any family, regardless of income, regardless of whether the school deems you to have financial need or not, as long as you filled out FAFSA, you can get access to $5,500 freshman year, and then there are other limits for the following year.
Yeah, that's exactly right. It's income is irrelevant. More income, or a family that has more less need, or almost no need in some cases, it really could be no need for a family with very high income. The loans are still available to families. They would be unsubsidized, meaning the interest is accruing while the student's in school. Families can choose to pay the interest or capitalize the interest. It's a choice that individual can make. But to your point, I can remember, and this was a long time ago. So really about, I think it was 21 years ago. I had a family where the income was $1.2 million, and I thought they were certainly able to pay for the son's tuition, but the student borrowed as much as they could in every year that they could. It was unsubsidized. But the point being there is that some families choose to access the loans under any circumstances, right?
Right.
And then freshmen, $5,500, sophomores, $6,500, and then up to $7,500 in future years. The important thing to highlight here, and I imagine that your families are thinking this anyway, well, gee, that doesn't really cover what we need, right? So it's a drop in the bucket. And the federal government, clearly, based on these loan limits, and by the way, the loan limits have really not changed over the last maybe 17 or 18 years, and they really haven't moved very much over the last 30 years.
Right.
They really haven't. The last increase that we saw was $2,625 to $3,500, and that was probably 16 or 17 years ago. Not a lot of movement. The government does not expect that full gap to be covered with student loans, with direct
with the federal student loans, right?
Yeah, with the federal student loans for undergraduate students, they just don't make that much available, and everybody realizes the average student owes more. So then it's, well, what comes next, right? Because $5,500 really is not going to meet the full gap. And then what's available to families after that? And I think it's good to. I know, Debbie, you've done a lot on award letters and understanding award letters and interpreting award letters. And at this point, people have multiple award letters, and you're probably comparing one to the next. And I think what families are probably seeing is that schools do different things in the award letters, and they prepare them and present them in different ways. Some schools will just present the direct costs. This is how much tuition is and any fees owed directly to the school. And they don't build in cost of attendance, right? Transportation, technology, meals or housing for a student that's not living on campus up top. And other schools do. Some schools will package all the way up to that total cost, right? Some schools will leave a gap at the bottom. In other words,
it's interesting. Just when you use the word package, it's really, maybe just kind of explain. It's really kind of just the presentation of the information. You know, they're not really doing anything special. They can't like run magic with, you know, what the numbers that they give you. It's just the way that they're showing the numbers.
Well, you're absolutely right. And there's a lot of thinking that goes into this at the school, and they've got an enrollment management policy, and they're looking obviously to present the information in a way that they think either just promotes the selection of that school, because it really is it's an advertisement, it's a marketing piece. Yes, it's an award letter. It's informational and it's incredibly important for the families. But the idea is that it's going to drive a student to enroll there. But yeah, but you're absolutely right. The way a school presents the information might look different, but it doesn't mean that the actual meat and potatoes in the award letter is in fact different. But we do encounter schools that will package all the way up to the cost of attendance. And let's say it's a high cost school, $60,000 on cost of attendance. And when you look at the awards, hopefully there's a lot of grant and scholarship funds, and then there's the student loan, and then they're going to meet whatever the remaining gap is, typically with a parent plus loan, right? They know your student is a dependent undergraduate student. They want to present to you, hey, look, you've got a total solution, and of course that total solution is going to be funds that are borrowed, but they're able to bring the need or the remaining need down to zero because they presented you with a full solution. And some other schools won't do that. At the end of the day, at some other schools, you'll see a remaining gap at the bottom of the award letter that is the amount that needs to be financed in an alternative manner, be it with a parent plus loan, be it with a private student loan, be it with direct payments to the school. But even those award letters that show a parent plus loan, and many of them do, that doesn't mean that you have to take the parent plus loan, right? Because there's an option, and that's the important reason I think that it's worth mentioning it. That's a suggestion, and you'll find that schools, at least through an award letter, will only suggest a parent plus loan. On an award letter, they generally will not make a reference to or present an alternative with a private loan. But very often in their information that they make available on their website, for many schools, when you look through their website, you'll find alternative loan options or a private lender list that you could take a look at, or you could certainly find your own options and begin to explore your own options. And by and large, that's happening more today than ever before because of the access of information. Folks like you, Debbie, that are putting good information out there in front of parents to get them thinking a little bit more broadly about being able to pursue the options. So a couple of things that are good to keep in mind. I think the Stafford loan that is available directly to students, actually interest rates have dropped. And this is good news for families because we were 1, 2, 3 consecutive years of increasing interest rates on all federal student loans. And last year, the Stafford loan was up to 5.05% with a 1% fee. This year, the Stafford loan, and this is both the sub and the unsub loan, the interest rate's at 4.53%. And that's that first $5,500 that students can access directly.
So, you know,
right?
Do you mind, let me just pop in because this is a good question. Julie is asking, she her student was offered unsubsidized and subsidized loans. And she's saying, does it make sense to take advantage of the unsubsidized loan if we're going to have to borrow a large amount in private loans anyhow?
Yeah, and that's a good question. I think it's there's a strategy that you have to consider, a strategy that you have to look at. Many families do that, right? Where they'll go to the Stafford loans first, or the direct loans, and they'll access whatever they can, and then they'll fund the alternative through a private loan program. I would say it's going to be a very personal decision, because you'll need to see what are you able to fund at through your private loan product that you've selected. So as an example, our loan product, the CommonBond private loan, today our interest rates on our variable rate loan product start as low as 3.74. Our interest rates on our fixed rate product start at 5.45. So depending upon which type of product you choose to get into, and depending upon the interest rate that the student can receive by virtue of the strength of the cosigner, the answer would be, well, it's certainly possible that you could get an interest rate that is significantly lower than the subsidized Stafford loan. But it would never be bad advice to say, stick with your Stafford loan to fund the first $5,500, and then use the private loan option of a lender like CommonBond or one of our competitors to fund the balance. It would not necessarily be bad advice to do that, but it's really going to depend on the interest rates that you can receive. And I can tell you that we've got families that choose either path.
That makes sense. So I interrupted you, but you were kind of finishing up talking.
Yeah, so I was talking a little bit about the interest rate trends, and interest rates are just about 60 basis points or 52 basis points less than they were last year, which is great news on the sub and the unsub Stafford loan. And then on the parent plus loan, right, interest rates are just really high. And there's a couple of reasons that parents are not thrilled about the parent plus loan. The first is, well, the name of the product itself tells us that the parent is the primary borrower for that loan product. In many cases, this doesn't really fit the path of the direction that parents choose to make. Very often, there's not just one student that's going to college, but there's another or two or three or four coming up behind them. And for a parent to stare down, the reality of borrowing over multiple education tenures, the debt body just continues to grow. So in many cases, parents are much more comfortable with a co-signing of an application where the student becomes the primary borrower. And that's one of the key features of most private loans that are available, is that you have the opportunity for the student to be the primary borrower on the application, with the parent as a co-signer. And the kind of the cool thing that happens there is that the liability is the student's responsibility, again, personal family decision, but the loan is scored upon the strength of the parent, right? So if you have a parent with a solid FICO score, good credit history, comes in, co-signs the student's loan, let's say it's a freshman student, an 18-year-old student, doesn't have established credit for any real length of time, doesn't have a strong FICO score, those pieces for the student are completely irrelevant, because the strength of the parent as the cosigner is what scores that loan. So you could have the student earning a really solid interest rate by virtue of having a strong cosigner, parent, or other adult, right, on that application. And even today, even with interest rates dropping, plus interest rates last year were 7.6%. This year they're coming in at 7.08%. As I mentioned, first time in 4 years that we saw a drop, but the fees are still 4%, right? So the second reason that parents don't feel comfortable with a plus loan, first of all, I'm a parent, don't want to borrow myself. I'd much rather co-sign for my student. But the next reason is that even if I'm comfortable borrowing directly. We don't want a loan at 7.08% with a 4% fee on it. It's really significant. And again,
Keith, maybe you can just explain that fee, like, it's called the origination fee, and kind of estimating what that really does to the overall,
absolutely.
10.08% is not really what you end up, Go ahead.
Yeah, great point. And it's very interesting. So the 7.08% is the actual interest rate, right? It's not an APR. We know, or most people know, people that have shopped around for financial products, be they car loans, be they mortgages, we're accustomed to fees. We know mortgages may have points. You may choose a mortgage that has points on it in exchange for a slightly lower interest rate. And all in all, it's expressed as an APR, an annual percentage rate, which is the real cost of a loan. And as a matter of fact, the federal government requires lenders to express their costs of loans in APR in every case. So when we present our interest rates and other lenders to families, we express an APR. So I said our variable rate product, private loan product, starts at 3.74. That's our APR rate. The federal government expresses in interest rate. A little bit unfair. I don't think they're doing it purposefully to confuse people, but they just don't express APR. But that 4% fee, think about it, it comes right off the top. So if you had to borrow, we'll choose some round numbers here, right? If you were borrowing $25,000 in a Parent Plus loan, there's a $1,000. It's gonna be a little bit more than $1,000 because it's just over 4%. But $1,000 comes right off the top. So if you needed $25,000, you really have to borrow $26,000, but only $25,000 gets delivered to the school because 4% evaporates in an origination fee directly to the government, right? And of course, that loan is accruing interest immediately. Right? Begins to accrue
interest on the $26,000.
That is correct, right? So that 4% fee that disappeared, that the government kept for origination costs, will begin to immediately accumulate interest. And it's not just year one, right? But it's year two. If you borrow the Grad Plus, year three, year four. So if you only needed $25,000, and I don't think that's an unrealistic amount that families need to access there. Over 4 years, you're paying $4,000 in fees plus interest that have accumulated on those fees. You're looking at probably $5,500, maybe $5,700 in fees and interest attached to those fees purely. So APR is probably closer in this case to about 7.75%, depending on the length of repayment, depending on a lot of things, but APR is significantly higher. Relative, so if we take Graduate Plus and compare it to a private loan that's available to families, as I said, on our fixed rate product, we begin at 5.45%, on variable 3.74% with no fees, right? With zero fees. So there's the real opportunity to begin saving money immediately. And there's very little that we could do to control the cost of education,
right? As
individuals, right? And as a society, I think we need to address this. That's a whole other conversation for sure, and I think it's a worthwhile one. But at the point that we need to fund our kids as they're going to school, the important thing is to do everything that we can to minimize interest rates, to minimize fees, and then to make the right choices or the best choices. And the real message is don't think or don't believe necessarily that the loans through the federal government are going to be the best or the cheapest choices that families can make. Because in many cases, they're not. Families can access lower cost funding. And in some cases, it's not only the cost associated with it, but it's just the better path or the better choice where the student's the primary borrower as opposed to the parent being the primary borrower. again, every family fits in a little bit differently here, but I just, it's important to enforce. Some folks out there might think, well, it's the federal government, that's got to be the best place to borrow because they must have the lowest costs. And the reality is it's really not the case. And again, I want to reiterate this. I said this before. The federal government makes a one-size-fits-all alternative for parents, right? So we know that you put 10 people in a room, 10 adults in a room, they've got a wide variety of FICO scores, a wide variety of how they've treated credit, and there's a wide variety of credit profiles, and those individuals would look very different if they were coming through a private product. So if they were all applying for the Graduate Plus loan, they would all get that same interest rate of 7.08%. That's significantly higher on an APR. So if you are, particularly for families that have stronger profiles or moderately stronger profiles, when you take a Graduate Plus loan, in many ways, we wind up subsidizing the borrowing of those more risky families because it's a one-size-fits-all solution. So again, for parents that have stronger credit profiles, it's particularly important to see how much money you can save in private loan programs. And then for other families, simply that don't want to borrow directly through the Graduate Plus loan, but are much more comfortable with having
Parent Plus loan.
Yeah, with the Parent Plus loan.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, and they rather the student have skin in the game, right? We want this, we're going to co-sign for you, but we want that loan to be in the student's name. It's the right solution for them.
So what I hope everybody is hearing is that, you should feel comfortable to shop around or learn what the different private lenders can offer you. And it may end up being better than what the government can offer. So you don't have to take the government, particularly the Parent Plus loan, just because it was on the financial aid form or because it's from the government. You should at least find out what you might be able to receive in an interest rate from other lenders, and then decide, make a comparison. Understand what's out there before you kind of rush in and think, oh, I have to take that Parent Plus loan, because you don't have to. That's not the only option out there.
Yeah, and in some cases, I've actually heard students say, well, I didn't even know private loans were available, right? Or I only knew that the federal programs were an option, and that's because schools generally, at least in terms of award letters, that's the first path, or the path of least resistance, that they take and they present. So again, it's important to understand what those options are. And then families, there's some really good questions, and I imagine we'll pull some of them through here, but families will always say, well, what are the risks associated with private borrowing versus borrowing through the federal government? What about those protections that are offered? Those are some really, really important questions, I think. What are the loan terms? And generally speaking, private lenders offer some really compelling benefits and really compelling, we'll get into some details, but really compelling benefits and really compelling offers in many cases to match the protections of the federal government, because we have to, right? That's the population that we're working with, the students. It's a very specific demographic. We know that an undergraduate student is in school and is probably not earning funds and probably doesn't have the ability to repay while they're in school. So we offer full deferments on our student loans if students or families choose to go that route. If they
just explain what that means.
Sure, yeah. So if you think about loans that we generally take, if it's a mortgage, if it's a car loan, there's typically a payment that's due immediately, right? Or maybe the 15th or the 1st of the month following when the funds are dispersed. So with a student loan, funds are dispersed to help you pay for school. Funds are dispersed in the same way, in a very similar way, I should say, to the way federal loans are dispersed. We pay directly to your financial aid office, and they use the proceeds to pay your tuition. And then if there's a refund that you expect, you'll receive the refund directly from the school. The message there being that CommonBond works with about 2,500 schools nationally. We speak directly to financial aid offices. We visit with them. We know the way they want to conduct their business. and we make sure that they receive loan information, loan certification data, and then funding in exactly the way that suits the school's needs and will suit your personal needs directly. So it's seamless, right? You've applied for an application through CommonBond, it's been approved. We reach out to the school to let them know your student's name, this is how much they're borrowing, expect the funding this way, and then they let us know the date that they want the funds, we disperse the funds. It's really very seamless. In fact, it works a lot more seamlessly than it even sounds as I explain it.
Mm-hmm.
But you're funded in exactly that way. So it's really very quick. Now, students have the option of choosing between 4 different repayment options, because in many cases, probably our most popular plan will be, hey, you know what? I'm in school. I'm not working. I don't have the ability to begin repaying my loan immediately. And I would like a full deferment, meaning I'm not looking to make any payments while I'm in school because I can't or I don't want to. And I don't want to make any payments until 6 months after I graduate. That's one repayment plan that's quite popular and we make available. Some students say, you know what, I want to make something. I want to pay something back. So in order to accommodate that, we have a $25 per month payment plan, regardless of the amount that a student has borrowed. You have the option of paying $25 per month. And the cool thing about that is, in almost every case, a student can afford $25 per month, right? I guess it's probably the cost of maybe 4 lattes at Starbucks.
Right.
Maybe the cost of 3 green tea matcha lattes. And everyone can afford it. And what it does, it begins to build a relationship. So it begins to build a rapport between the borrower and the lender. So we get really excited about that option because we now have a relationship with the student immediately. They make payments to us. And in exchange for that, we actually offer them even a more competitive interest rate, or we offer them some interest rate savings, because the sooner they come on board and start making payments, the more excited we are about doing business with them.
Oh, I didn't know you give some sort of a little discount if they're starting to repay anything while they're in college.
That's correct, yes. And then other repayment options are interest only. So a person could say, you know what, I'm comfortable paying a little bit more than $25 a month. I would like to pay the interest down. As the interest accrues, that's the amount that I want to pay. And then another option would be the full repayment beginning immediately, where you're making a combination of interest and principal payments really beginning immediately. But those are 4 different types of options, and then those would be split into different repayment terms, length, or repayment tenures. And for our undergraduate programs, we offer a 5, a 10, and a 15-year repayment schedule.
And just compare that to the Parent Plus loan. What options do you get there?
Sure. So the Parent Plus loan triggers repayment, formally triggers repayment immediately, but families could choose to defer while the student's in school as well. So you've got those 2 options. It's either full deferment or it's full repayment while the student's in school. And a standard repayment on a Parent Plus loan will be a 10-year term. But the cool thing with private loan options like CommonBond is that family will choose what fits best for the student, be it 5, be it 10, be it 15.
Right.
But at any point in time, a family can accelerate payments, or a student can accelerate payments. So you could make double payments. You can just add an extra $100 on, or an extra $10 per month, and there's no penalty for doing that. So it's not unusual that we'll have a borrower that's sort of excited, wanting to accelerate their payments, and we certainly won't penalize them for choosing to do that at all, right? So a couple of other benefits I think that's important to note. We talked about the parent being a cosigner on that student loan, and many parents, right? People just have so much that's happening in their personal lives, their businesses, or relative to purchasing homes or second homes or making retirement plans. And it's not uncommon that a family is willing to co-sign, but is hopeful that they can be removed as a co-signer somewhere down the line. And the CommonBond private loan offers a cosigner release option after 24 consecutive payments. So once the loan goes into repayment, the borrower's made 24 consecutive repayments. The borrower can apply to have the cosigner released from that loan. Our expectation is that the borrower's made the 24 consecutive payments and is able to meet our credit criteria at the time.
So Keith, do you mind me asking, when you say 24 consecutive months, is that if I'm a student, my parent co-signed, and I start paying in college the $25, so is that $25 repayment? Does that go towards the 24 consecutive months?
Right. So this will be post.
Okay.
This will be in full repayment.
Okay, full repayment. Okay,
it was a great question. It's full repayment after post grace period.
Got it.
Yeah, that's exactly right. But the reality is, we can see a scenario where within 2 years or 2.5 years coming out of graduation, the cosigner could be released on that loan. That tends to be a really popular option. And in some cases, parents or other family members that may not be comfortable co-signing are more willing to co-sign as a result, really as a result of that, for sure. Yeah. Now, there are a lot of options, right? We talked about 3 different repayment tenures. Do I choose 5? Do I choose 10? Do I choose 15? Do I do a full deferment where I don't make any payments while I'm in school? Do I pay $25 a month? Do I pay my interest only? Do I pay interest and principal full repayment? And then what's my total cost on the loan?
Yes.
Right. So this is, depending upon how you put your loan together, we offer just highly customized private loans because you have the ability to choose not just the amount that you're borrowing, which is right at the very front piece, but you get to choose these other options. And as you piece it together, you're going to see your interest rate is impacted, right? Generally a longer repayment term has a higher interest rate or a slightly higher interest rate. A little bit more risk in having a loan repaid over 15 years than having it repaid over 5 years or 10 years. A little bit more risk in having a fully deferred loan option as opposed to having a loan that goes into immediate repayment. Small differences, but not huge. But we present, when a person comes through our application on with our online application, a person will come through, really quick, very seamless application, a great logic, really pulls you through. It presents to you your options and your choices. So you can see, okay, well, if I took a 10-year repayment, fully deferred loan, this is what my interest rate is. Using the calculator that we have built into our site, you can determine what your total cost is on that product. And you can begin to sort of play around with the options to find what fits best or what you really feel best meets your needs.
So I'm just curious, so when somebody gets that information, let's say I applied, I get back that information from CommonBond, how much time do I have before I have to make the commitment? Like, can I use that information, play around with it for a few days, and then kind of come back and say, okay, this is the combination I want?
Yeah, absolutely. So a person reasonably can come through the application, I think, in about 8 minutes. Cosigner, if we don't need documents. If we need documents, there may be some upload. Many families come through, they really don't need documents because we really electronic data match on a lot of these data points that we need. So you have the opportunity to come through very quickly. We present the choices to a student that's applied. They don't need to book in that session. Everything is saved in terms of their progress. They can consider, they come back and take a look or think about it. And they've got they've got quite a bit of time to make that decision. More time than they'll need, considering that they need to fund for September. So we encourage people to take time to make their decision. Call in if you have questions, right? We're really eager and happy to speak to people on the phone about what those options are and what they're looking at and what the differences are. But you'll see, we present a family with a rate card that includes a lot of different options, but really lets them decide what's going to be the best fit for them. And it's fully transparent. Our process, our product from the very beginning As a matter of fact, when the company was founded, when CommonBond was founded by David Klein, he was a business student at the University of Pennsylvania and had come through a very high-cost program with very heavy borrowing from lenders that were available at the time. And his takeaway from that experience was that lenders were really not transparent. He didn't see truth in lending disclosures or final interest rates until after he had booked the loan. So as CommonBond was being built, it was being built to address sort of the lack of transparency and the inability of lenders at the time to present choices to students in a way that it was easy for them to understand, to interpret. You know, we're all about making the right information available as much as early to families as possible, and then having them come through and make good choices. Heavy technology is built into the process, but if a family wants to utilize the technology and then a high touch, we encourage people to call us directly to speak through that as well. We're always excited to talk to families.
That's so nice, because as much as, you know, you want to use technology and get through it, every once in a while you just have a question that's hard to type out, or you know, that you just need to explain to somebody verbally. Then and it's so nice to be able to just call up and, you know, talk to somebody and explain your situation and have them immediately respond. Yeah,
that's what we find.
So why don't you talk about, I mean, so we've talked a little bit about you know, in looking at comparing loans, interest rates, the fees, which are really mainly on the government Parent Plus loan. You talked about the term, you know, CommonBond, and a lot of private lenders give you some options about how quickly you want to pay the loan back versus the, you know, the government loan. It's usually one option. You talked about the different options about deferment and when people can start paying. I mean, another feature or something to think about when picking, you know, a lender that we don't always talk about, which is a little harder to quantify, but is really the customer service, because you're going to be with this company for a long time. You know, at a minimum, probably 5 years, could be 15 years, and so you want to feel that you are going to be supported in you know, whatever types of interactions you need to have with the company.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, if you think through, you know, and certainly over the last 10 years or so, student loans have gotten a lot of bad press. And there have been a lot of servicing snafus or issues, borrowers that haven't been happy or pleased with the service or have gotten sort of the runaround in some cases. And this generally applies to servicers that work the federal student loans.
Yeah.
And I think it's just important, I think interesting to note for families that even though Stafford and Plus loans, direct loans and Plus loans are government loans, the government doesn't have the ability to service those loans directly. They actually outsource servicing of those loans to a variety of private lenders, private loan servicers, I should say. And in many cases, the customer service that families have been receiving is really not up to par. And that's been primarily what we hear about in the media in terms of the service related to student loans. In private student loans, a variety of companies that make those loan products available. And the customer experience begins through the application process. And if we don't have the ability to deliver a seamless application process, we've lost really at the very beginning. So yeah, we accommodate that through technology, delivering a highly streamlined technology experience. And we handle students' requests directly at CommonBond in-house. Our offices are in Soho, in Manhattan, and our customer service area, they sit just three rows away from me. We cover the bulk of our call-ins in New York, and then we also have a West Coast facility in Oregon, just to help load balance across the time zones. But we're entirely US-based, and very excited and eager to speak to families directly. The majority of, I would say, the majority, but probably really all of our staff have been through funding college directly themselves. They're sensitive to the experience. They're incredibly knowledgeable about the products that CommonBond offers, and they're incredibly knowledgeable about the competing products that the federal government offers. And our perspective, and I've heard this directly from our founders, his words directly are, if we're the right solution and if we can save families money and provide a compelling solution for them, we want their business. But in cases where we're not the right fit or not the right solution, we're going to have that honest conversation and send you to the right place. So that's the kind of lender that we are. It's the kind of service that we provide. And we offer lifetime service. So from the time a family begins the journey, those service providers are CommonBond directly, all the way through repayment and servicing of the loan. CommonBond is always going to be first line at answering questions and providing support to families all the way through. So we're just really excited to deliver exceptional levels of customer service, not just to our families and borrowers, but to school customers. It's what we do, and it's really one of our most important tasks.
No, that's great to hear. I just want to get to some questions. Tony was asking, if I apply for a loan, oh, this is good. This relates to what you were just talking about, Keith. If I apply for a loan, can I get my interest rate before I decide on the repayment option? I hate to have too many credit report hits applying for the best rate. So there's really two questions in there. The one is about, is she going to get her interest rate beforehand? And also maybe can you talk a little bit about this fear of having too many credit report hits?
Yeah, sure. There's some really good stuff packed into that question. So the first is sort of the architecture of the application as a person comes through. You absolutely will be presented with your options prior to making a choice on what loan tenure and what repayment structure you're looking for. So before you finalize the application, you'll have your full list, and it'll look something like 5-year loan tenure, fully deferred product with an interest rate, 5-year immediate repayment option with an interest rate, 5-year $25 per month option with an interest rate, and it'll go through all of the different terms. So you really wind up with maybe 30 or so different choices to choose between before you finalize. So we are about being fully transparent, giving you all the information that you need to make the right choice. And if you run into a choice like analysis paralysis, oh my goodness, there's so much here, what do I do with it? That's when we want you to give us a call, and we'll talk through what options maybe are really work best for you based on your unique situation, right? That's where high tech is really supported by high touch.
Right.
How we see delivery of awesome customer service, for sure. The other question is about what do I do in terms of minimizing my hard credit hit because I'm concerned about the impact on my FICO score. So student loans work in the same way in this regard as most other major products work. So if you're shopping, for instance, for a car, and maybe you go to 2 or 3 different dealerships, and if you were to apply for a loan through those dealerships or maybe directly through bank shopping for a car, and if you had 3 different applications coming through for car loans, for instance, the credit bureaus know that you are shopping for 1 car loan, right? And it's the same way for mortgages. You might 3, 4, 5 hits for mortgages, but as long as they're clustered within a reasonably short period of time, I forget the exact amount. I think it's within 60 days, but I'm not. Don't quote me on that. As long as those hits are they're clustered, then we know you're only going for 1 mortgage, you're only going for 1 car loan, you're only going for 1 student loan. So if you were price shopping between private lenders and you went to 2 or 3, you're not going to see. You will. The reality is you have a single hard credit hit, so you'll see some minimal impact on credit scoring as a result, but you won't get dinged for having multiples, again, because we know that you're only shopping for 1 student loan.
Along the same lines, Sandra asked, does CommonBond have a pre-qualification process? Maybe even explain what pre-qualification is and how that might relate to this conversation about credit hits.
So when you visit our website, we give quite a bit of information about the loan program. We want to make sure that families have as much information as necessary to know that they have the basic qualifications to come through and apply for an application. I think, I'm not certain what she's thinking in terms of pre-qualification. Maybe it would be something like a soft credit hit,
yes,
right? To delve a little bit more deeply. We're currently not offering that as an option. It's something that we're considering, and we're probably moving in that direction. But from our perspective, we're looking to be as fully transparent as possible and to give honest and realistic pricing to families. And what we seem to realize is that hard credit pull in the presentation of income data where it applies really gives us the ability to get the actual rate as opposed to the promise of a rate that may or may not actually pull through. So we're looking at it very, very deeply. But our reality, or my approach, and the way I've thought deeply about this question in the past, if a person is looking to pre-qualify, they're in the space, right? They're in the game. They know they're going to need a loan. So I personally believe that a pre-qual or a soft credit hit, when I know I'll ultimately be applying for a loan and doing a hard credit hit, let's shop apples to apples. You're going to pre-qual with one lender that makes it available. They're going to tell you what they think that rate might be, and then you go to a different lender and maybe
give you like a range, so you don't even get like
That's correct. And people really should be very rate sensitive. And I've seen families or students that are rate sensitive where if it's 10 basis points or 15 basis points, right, that's enough to make one decision over another because people are really rate sensitive. And if you're using that pre-qualification with that range, just go the distance, do the hard credit hit with an application or multiple applications. You're going to do it anyway.
Right, and especially now that you know that if you do it within a certain amount of time, and we'll research it because I've heard between 30 and 45 days. If you're going to if you're going to go to get several quotes and get the actual quotes and do it within the 30 or 45 days and have, as you're saying, the apples to apples to make a good decision.
That's correct. Yep, it's certainly my perspective.
Okay, Allison is asking, can I take out more than one loan during the 4 years of college? And this might be, and I don't know, she didn't qualify, but this might be in relation to sometimes I've been starting to see some lenders say, apply once and you don't have to reapply again for 4 years for a loan, which may not be completely accurate.
So a couple things. I mean, if the question is, do I have to stay with the same lender over 4 years? The answer would be no. I mean, there's good reasons to choose someone that you're comfortable with. And then stick with them if they provide the best funding option for you all the way through. I do like to see families kind of make a good choice and then stay with that choice year over year because it does facilitate repayment, makes repayment a little bit easier, a little bit better, just simply easier to manage. So typically I would like to see funding happen where you borrow one loan for the year that you need it, because colleges work on years, right? They give you an award letter for a fall and a spring term, typically, for your first year. And then they'll do that for your sophomore year, your junior year, and your senior year. So in most cases, if a student is in school for 4 years and not that 5 years that many push into, you'll see 4 different award letters, and you're going to use one private loan to cover fall and spring in each year. And typically, what will happen is you get the full cost of fall and spring, or at least you can see it in the award letter. The private loan that you apply for will be for the full year, but it'll disperse half in the fall and then half in the spring. Now that'll be the amount that you need. And if everything is neat and clean and normal, that'll be all that you need. But in some cases, maybe you find out during the year that you need more money, and then you can borrow an additional loan. But generally, have one loan per year. It can be the same lender. If you wanted it to be, it could be a different lender as well.
So kind of along that same line of question, Allison's also is asking, what if she doesn't need to take out a loan the first semester? Can she apply for the loan second semester? Absolutely.
Yeah. Now, of course, schools are going to have the expectation that you cover your costs early on. So you might have, in some cases, people have cash or a certain amount of cash that they decide they're going to spend down first, and they get as far as, fall term first year, and then they've spent out what they have, and then they get into their second term. So yeah, that certainly can be the case. Yeah, I mean, our application process, private lenders have their application process open all year around, so you can do that at any point in time. The important thing is going to be that the school is comfortable and the school knows that you have a way of paying your tuition.
So along that, also that question about, Keith, are you there? Yep, there. About the question about, taking out loans every year. As you said, if you do, or if you are with one lender and if things are going well, you might want to consider that because it'll just make your processes easier. Do they have to stay with the same cosigner? Can they be changing cosigners year to year?
Absolutely. Yeah, they could change cosigners if they choose to do it. In some cases, one cosigner might get you a more compelling rate than another.
Okay.
Yeah. So you can, that won't change. And realistically, cosigners, just the reality will change. Hopefully, cosigners have solid employment. In many cases, family members. So what happens to a cosigner happens to the student directly themselves. So if there's solid, stable income, stay with a cosigner. If something happens, a cosigner becomes overextended or can no longer be that partner for you, then you can certainly move between cosigners.
So I think you kind of relieved Tony. I think she asked that question about would she need to borrow everything up front. She said, I'm so happy I don't have to borrow for all 4 to 5 years up front. Her daughter's entering a 5-year engineering program.
Yeah, for sure. And actually, in most cases, the school won't let you borrow for all 5 years up front. And they're not, they may tell you, and I think it's always good to go down the path of total cost of education is going to.
You should figure that out as a family.
That's correct. But they're not going to tell you, you need $150,000 to cover the full cost. Right? They won't tell you that. And certainly you won't need to borrow it up front.
How about one last quick topic? Is just, and because this always comes up as a question, it's just timing. How much time should families leave between, if the tuition bill is due, August 1st, when should they make sure that they start applying for loans, that there's enough time for all of this to happen?
So look, we're in that time right now. Right, it's time for families to apply for private loans and see what kind of funding is available.
And not to cut you, but if a family applies now and the tuition bill isn't due until August, how long is the interest rate that like a company like CommonBond offers? How long is it valid for?
They're going to lock in. I understand. So if they've applied for the loan, how long the interest rate's valid for? Understood. So we'll have the ability to lock in that interest rate right up until the time that the loan is funded, which is going to be in September, right? So it's actually 90 days.
Okay.
It's 90 days. Once the loan's been certified by the school, it can disperse at any time through the year.
Got it. So it's 90 days from if I apply to when it's certified from the school, and then it's locked into whenever it ends up having to be dispersed.
That's correct. Yeah, because you'll see in some cases, right, loans won't disperse until January, right, or the second disbursements will come in through January. And in this case, right, it's June at this point. Family applies for a loan. We can have 6 months or 7 or 8 months until those disbursements actually occur.
So families should be applying for the loans now, A, to see what the actual rates are, B to gather their information, C to start making decisions. And it, you know, even if your bill isn't due until August 15th, you're still, I mean, whatever you decide is still going to be valid between now and August 15th.
That's correct. Yes. Yes. But now's the time to come through the application, begin deciding how that funding is going to occur.
Okay, great. Anything else you think we missed to give people like information about, you know, what they should be looking for as they're, you know, gathering their information, figuring out, you know, which loan is some, you know, more, you know, is for their family versus another loan?
I think the important thing is that families understand that options are available, absolutely, and not get sort of tied up thinking that the federal government offers those best choices, and then dig a little bit deep, shop around, take a look at our product, for instance, or look at what other lenders make available, and then come through the application and take a look and see really what works best for the family, and just explore with an open mind. Yeah,
no, that's a great advice. Actually, so one last question came in from Stephanie. This is a interesting one. She's saying if a parent has 2 kids in college and they end up using the same lender for both children, does the company get do a hard credit hit twice? Oop, Keith, are you there? Keith, did we lose you, or are you just moving stuff around? Nope. Keith, are you still there? Oh, there. Keith, can you hear me?
What was that question?
Yeah. Sorry. Stephanie was asking if a parent has 2 kids in college and uses the same lender for both kids, does the company do like 2 hard credit hits?
Understood. So in that particular case, yeah, I'm actually not certain. I probably have to follow up. I mean, so generally, if we think about the format, right, each application is treated individually or uniquely or independently. So as those applications come through, the process would trigger a hard credit pull. I think it's the kind of scenario where we probably want to take it offline. I think the parent would be a little bit sensitive to minimize the number of hard credit pulls that actually occur. I think in that situation, realistically, the cosigner gets that hard credit pull, and if it's clustered within that same short period of time, it would actually show the same way, right?
Right.
That they wouldn't get dinged multiple times, even though they are shopping as a cosigner for different students. So I think it would probably be okay. But in that situation, realistically, we would not have a need to pull to do a hard credit pull once we've already have it. But we would sort of have to take it offline. So I would encourage, in that particular case, the family to call in once, say, one application is done, the second application comes through. I would ask for a call into our customer care center and just talk that through and say, I'm concerned, I don't want a second hard credit hit. We've got what we need. So once we manually push a button, right, pull a lever, I don't believe we would have to do that.
Right.
Haven't had that question before. That's kind of a cool one.
Yeah, that is. Somebody asked the question the other day, kind of similar. Basically, they had twins and wondering, and they were going to have to apply for private loans for both the students, wondering if they had to fill out 2 applications. And obviously they do, because each loan is going to different schools.
Well, yeah, so a couple of things. I mean, in that particular case, what we want to keep in mind with private student loans, right? The loan belongs to the student, right? So in that case, we've got 2 twins, right? 2 individual students, and each one is going to owe on the amount that they're borrowing. The unifying factor there is the fact that the parent is the cosigner, right? But there are 2 separate loans at maybe 2 separate schools, or even if they were the same school, wouldn't make a difference because the student is the borrower,
True.
and the parent is the cosigner. And it would be the same, as a matter of fact, even with the federal government, with the Parent Plus loan, a parent says, well, I've got two schools two students at the same school. Do I still have to borrow two loans? And even in that case, the answer is yes.
Yeah, yeah.
Because the loan is attached to the individual student, it gets dispersed, and it's still attached to the student, even if it's the parent borrower. It's a parent loan for this student, and it gets funded in that way.
Okay, I think one last question. Tony has a good one. So she's basically asking if we reapply like each year. So let's say they take a loan out with CommonBond freshman year, then they need to take a second loan out for sophomore year. Is a credit check done every year?
Mm-hmm. So the answer is yes. A credit check is done every year. And the overwhelming majority of lenders will do this. There's probably one product that's out there now. It may be a second product being added soon from a lender where they will tell you, oh, you only have to apply once, and then we give you all of the funding. All through the years, you'll get the funding. So the reality in that particular case is that there's a hard credit pull the first year. And then there's a review of credit and income each and every year. So the important thing, I think, is for families to understand that with that particular product, where they say, oh, apply once and then receive 4 years worth of education. It's a little disingenuous, because parents should not come through the process thinking, oh, we've got 4 years of guaranteed funding.
Right.
That's not the case. That lender will not pull hard credit in year 2 or 3 or 4. They do pull soft credit, and they do look at income, and they're looking for changes or variations or modifications.
And they have the right to not actually continue with the loan each year.
Well, without a doubt, they're employing the same credit criteria in year 2 or 3
right.
or 4 that they do in year 1.
Right.
The only difference is they're not doing a hard credit pull, and
right.
they are doing the soft pull. So the only benefit I think from a person's perspective would be, oh, I don't get hard credit hit in year 2, 3, or 4, but all of the other factors are absolutely in play. And the reality is that, as a matter of fact, the rate that you've gotten in year 1 is not the rate that you'll get in year 2.
That's not very clear either when they do that marketing.
Yeah, you're not locking into a particular rate. They're really just swapping out the hard credit to a soft credit. That's the difference. I think it's interesting, but it's more fluff than there is meat in that particular case. And my concern, is that families think, oh, we found a 4-year funding solution here. And it's not that, because each year there's a decision made on whether or not that student would be funded and if that cosigner would be approved as a cosigner on that loan product.
Right. Okay. Well, once again, I think we had a lot of great questions, a lot of great knowledge from Keith. Hopefully, at this point, people are starting to feel, I know people never feel comfortable until it's completely over, but at least they're starting to feel comfortable about how the process works. Go out, start applying. I think the big lessons here are, you don't have to take the Parent Plus loan, understand what it is, go out, see what you can get in the private lending sector, compare, understand all your options. If you do apply multiple times we'll get this confirmed 30 or to 60 days, it's only going to be one credit hit. So don't be worried about, oh, I'm applying multiple times, I'm going to hurt my credit. That's not the case. What you should be trying to do is get the best information you can to make the best decision you can at this point. Absolutely. It's about information. I know for sure the fact that your listeners are here, right? They're pursuing the best information they can get. They've been listening and then learning a lot and probably doing a lot of research. And I think we'll see, certainly that your folks, I think, are probably open-minded. Yeah. Hopefully you guys are by now. We teach you through the college admissions process to ask questions, and through every process. Really just ask questions, gather your information, and then make a good decision. Absolutely. Yeah. Okay.
We're excited to work with your families, for sure. It's been a great opportunity for us to learn and to share our information. So I thank you for your time, Debbie.
Oh, thank you, Keith. And people, Tony and Sandra are both saying thank you. Very helpful, very informative. Stephanie as well. I'm sure everybody who watched really got some good information tonight. Thank you so much, Keith.
Thanks. Take care. Have a good night.
Okay, you too. Take care. Bye.